I never planned on fighting my HOA. I didn't move into the neighborhood looking for drama, and I definitely didn't expect my life to turn into a legal nightmare because of a wooden bench and an open garage door. I bought the house on a Tuesday. Quiet signing. Normal paperwork. The realtor congratulated me and said Maplewood Estates was one of the most peaceful communities around. He mentioned the HOA, but like most people do, he treated it as background noise. I skimmed the rules, saw nothing alarming, and moved in by myself 3 days later. I'm a single guy in my 30s. No kids, no pets. I work from home, don't throw parties, and keep to myself. If HOAs had a model resident, I'd be it. The house was a corner lot with an old oak tree out front. Under it was a small, weathered wooden bench. It looked like it had been there for years, maybe decades. It came with the house, and I never once questioned it. That bench would become the beginning of everything. On my 3rd day in the house, I was unloading boxes into the garage when I noticed a woman standing at the edge of my driveway. She hadn't said anything. She was just watching me. She was in her mid-50s, dressed neatly, holding a clipboard like it was an extension of her body. When I waved and smiled, she didn't respond. "So you're the new owner," she said finally. "Yes, ma'am." "Just moved in." She nodded slowly, eyes moving past me into my garage, across the yard, and finally stopping on the bench beneath the oak tree. "I'm Karen Hartley," she said. "HOA president." I told her it was nice to meet her. She didn't say it back. "Did your realtor explain the rules?" she asked. "Yes," I replied. I read the handbook, her lips pressed together in a thin line. "Well," she said, tapping her clipboard once, "we'll see." Then she turned and walked away. It was awkward, but I didn't think much of it. Some people just like control. 3 days later, I came home from the grocery store and found a bright yellow paper taped directly to my front door. HOA violation. I immediate. Action required. I read it twice, convinced it had to be a mistake. Violation, improper use of garage. Violation, unauthorized exterior item. Fine, 150 bolos. Deadline, 48 hours. I stood there on my porch, genuinely confused. The garage had been open while I unloaded boxes. That was it. And the unauthorized exterior item could only mean the bench that was already there when I bought the house. I called the HOA number listed on the notice. It went straight to voicemail. I sent an email explaining that I was still moving in and that the bench came with the property. No response, so I did the reasonable thing and knocked on Karen Hartley's door. She answered wearing workout clothes and an expression that made it clear she was annoyed I existed. "Yes?" she said. "I received this violation notice," I said calmly, holding it up. "I think there's been a misunderstanding." She didn't look surprised. "You had your garage open for hours," she said. "Yes," I replied. I was moving. "That's not allowed." I stared at her. "That's not in the rules." She crossed her arms. "Garages are for parking vehicles, not storage. Not projects." "And the bench?" I asked. She glanced toward my house. "That wasn't approved. It came with the house." "The previous owner had permission," she said. "You don't." I actually laughed, thinking she had to be joking. "For a bench?" "Yes." Something about the way she said it felt less like enforcement and more like punishment. "This seems excessive," I said carefully. Her eyes hardened. "This community has standards," she replied. "You'll learn that." 2 days later, another violation appeared on my door. This time, it was 250. And that's when I realized this had nothing to do with rules, because I hadn't broken any. The second violation was the moment I stopped giving her the benefit of the doubt. $250 for unapproved exterior modification with no explanation beyond a single blurry photo attached to the notice. The photo showed disturbed dirt near the side fence, taken at night, with a timestamp just after 2 a.m. I stared at it for a long time. I hadn't touched the fence. I hadn't done any landscaping. I hadn't even been awake at 2 a.m. I checked my security camera footage immediately. I'd installed cameras the day after the first violation, mostly for peace of mind. I scrubbed through the timeline minute by minute. Nothing. No movement. No digging. No person anywhere near my fence. Just a quiet street, and the occasional car passing by. That's when the knot in my stomach tightened. This wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. Someone had either made a mistake or was lying. I emailed the HOA again, attaching screenshots from my camera footage showing there was no activity on my property at the time listed on the violation. 10 minutes later, I got a reply. Not from the HOA account, from Karen. Photo evidence confirms the violation. Further denial will result in escalation. That sentence told me everything I needed to know. She wasn't interested in the truth. She was interested in control. I replied calmly, asking for clarification on how anonymous photos were being verified, and requested a formal review by the full board. No response. But the fine appeared on my HOA account anyway. By the end of the week, I had 3 violations on record and nearly $1,000 in fines. That's when my neighbor across the street finally spoke to me. He waited until Karen wasn't around. I was taking my trash cans back in when he waved me over, lowering his voice like we were discussing something illegal. "Listen," he said, "I don't want to get involved, but she's doing this on purpose." "Why?" I asked. He hesitated, then said, "She wanted your house." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "Her son," he said. He tried to buy it, lost the bid. She was furious. Suddenly, every interaction made sense. The cold introduction. The instant violations. The refusal to listen. This wasn't about the HOA. This was personal. "She's done this before," my neighbor added quietly. "Not exactly like this, but similar. People usually just sell and leave." That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at my desk and started researching her name, the HOA, and Maplewood Estates. Old posts. Archived complaints. Threads where names had been replaced with HOA president to avoid lawsuits. Same story over and over again. Selective enforcement. Harassment. Fines that appeared out of nowhere. Residents who gave up and moved out. I decided I wasn't going to be one of them. The next morning, I sent a certified letter to the HOA requesting a formal hearing, citing the bylaws they themselves had written. They couldn't ignore that. The hearing was scheduled for the following Thursday evening at the community clubhouse. In the meantime, the violations didn't stop. I received another notice for failure to correct previous violations, even though I was actively disputing them. That one was $500, and at the bottom in bold letters was a warning: continued non-compliance may result in lien proceedings. That's when it hit me how serious this was. An HOA lien can destroy your credit. It can make refinancing impossible. In extreme cases, it can even lead to foreclosure, all over a bench and a garage door. The night before the hearing, I reviewed everything. Every email. Every notice. Every camera clip. I printed copies and organized them into folders. I wasn't angry anymore. I was focused. The clubhouse was packed. Not just the board. Not just me. Neighbors. People who had clearly been waiting for someone to finally push back. Karen sat at the head of the table, confident, clipboard in front of her. 2 other board members sat beside her, silent and uncomfortable. She opened the meeting without acknowledging me. The homeowner at 214 Maple has repeatedly violated community standards and shown unwillingness to comply, she said. I raised my hand. She ignored it. This hearing will determine further enforcement actions. I stood up. With respect, I said, I haven't been given a chance to respond. She sighed dramatically. You'll speak when it's your turn. I sat down and waited. When she finally allowed me to speak, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse her of anything. I simply laid out the facts. I showed the handbook sections that allowed temporary garage use during moving. I pointed out that exterior items existing prior to purchase did not require reapproval. I showed my camera footage, timestamps clearly visible. The room got quiet. Then I displayed the violation photo again. This image, I said, does not match my camera angles, my property layout, or my fence line. Someone in the audience whispered, "That's not even his yard." Karen interrupted me. "This is harassment of the board," she snapped. "No," I said calmly. "This is documentation." One of the board members finally spoke up and asked where the photo came from. Karen said it was submitted anonymously. The board member asked why anonymous evidence was accepted without verification. Karen didn't answer. The meeting ended without a decision. Karen stormed out. People stared at me as I packed up my folders. Several neighbors quietly thanked me. I went home thinking, maybe, just maybe, she would back off. She didn't. At 11:47 that night, my phone buzzed. Motion detected. I opened the camera feed. Karen was standing in my front yard. Not on the sidewalk, not at the curb. In my yard. She was holding a measuring tape. I watched in disbelief as she knelt near the bench, reached into her pocket, and placed something on the ground. Then she stepped back, took multiple photos with her phone, and walked away like she owned the place. I replayed the footage over and over. She had just trespassed. She had just planted evidence. The next morning, a new violation appeared. Unapproved landscaping materials. Fine $750. I didn't feel scared. I felt calm, because now I had something far more powerful than arguments. I had proof. I called a lawyer. And that was the moment everything changed. The lawyer didn't even hesitate. I showed him the footage on my phone. Karen stepping into my yard. Karen kneeling by the bench. Karen placing something on the ground. Karen photographing it like she'd just discovered buried treasure. He watched it once, then he watched it again. Then he leaned back in his chair and smiled. "Do not contact the HOA again," he said. "Do not respond to any notices, and absolutely do not warn her." I asked him why. "Because," he said, "she just committed trespassing, evidence tampering, and potentially fraud. And if she keeps going, it only gets worse for her." For the first time since this started, I slept through the night. 2 days later, I received a certified letter. Not from the HOA. From a law firm representing Maplewood Estates. It accused me of non-compliance, threatened immediate lien placement, and demanded payment of all outstanding fines within 7 days. The total was just over $1,800. My lawyer told me not to worry. He replied on my behalf, included copies of my camera footage, timestamps, screenshots, a formal notice of harassment, and a warning that any lien attempt would result in legal action against the HOA board personally. 3 hours later, I got an email from Karen. Not official, not professional. Just her. "You think you're smarter than everyone else. This isn't over." I forwarded it to my lawyer. He replied with one word. Good. That weekend, Karen escalated in a way I don't think she expected to backfire. I was working in my home office when I heard shouting outside. I checked the camera. Karen was in my driveway, on her phone, yelling loudly enough for the neighbors to hear. Minutes later, a sheriff's car pulled up. She had called the police. Again, I walked outside calmly, phone recording. Karen immediately pointed at me. "He's harassing me," she said. "He's altering the property and refusing to comply with HOA orders." The deputy looked tired. He asked to speak to both of us separately. Karen went first. I waited, watching her gesture wildly, clearly confident. She kept pointing toward my yard, my bench, my garage. Then, it was my turn. I handed the deputy my phone. Before I say anything, I said, "Please watch this." I showed him the footage. His expression changed instantly. "That's you?" he asked, pointing at Karen on the screen. She went pale. "That video," she snapped, "is taken out of context." He looked at her. "Ma'am," he said slowly, "you are clearly on his property." She tried to interrupt. "And you appear to be placing an object on the ground," he continued. She opened her mouth. "And photographing it," he finished. The deputy stepped back. "Do you have permission to be on his property?" Karen hesitated. "I'm the HOA president." "That's not permission," he said. Neighbors had started coming outside. Phones were out. People were watching. The deputy asked if I wanted to file a report. I said yes. Karen started yelling. She accused me of spying, of harassment, of intimidation. The deputy calmly told her to stop speaking. He turned his body cam toward her. And that's when she made the mistake that ended everything. She said, loud and clear, in front of witnesses, "I was just doing my job." If he didn't want violations, he should have sold the house when he had the chance. The deputy paused. "Sold the house to who?" he asked. She froze. To who?" he repeated. Silence. Her lawyer instincts kicked in far too late. The deputy wrote his report. Karen was cited for trespassing. But that wasn't the end. 2 weeks later, Karen tried to file the lien anyway. She did it quietly, hoping I wouldn't notice. My lawyer noticed immediately. Within days, the HOA board was served. Depositions were scheduled. Emails were subpoenaed. Board members panicked. Turns out Karen had been using the HOA account like her personal weapon for years. Selective enforcement. Unverified complaints. Threats sent without board approval. One board member resigned, then another. Then the management company dropped the HOA entirely. Karen tried to hold an emergency meeting. No one showed up. The final moment came on a Tuesday morning. Exactly 3 months after I bought the house, 2 sheriff's deputies knocked on my door. They weren't there for me. They were there for Karen. Charges related to falsifying records and filing false police reports had been approved. I watched from my porch as they walked her to their car. Neighbors watched silently. No one defended her. No one spoke. She looked straight at me as she passed. Not angry, not smug. Just shocked. Like someone who truly believed the rules didn't apply to her until they suddenly did. The HOA dissolved 6 months later. The fines were erased. The lien was voided. The bench stayed exactly where it was. I still sit on it some evenings, under the oak tree, watching the street that almost pushed me out. Karen's house is for sale now. Her son never moved in. And every time a new neighbor asks about the HOA, I just smile and say, there isn't one anymore. Want another story with body cam level consequences? Subscribe right now and comment. HOA nightmare. I'll pick one commenter's situation and turn it into the next episode.